The UK-based alt-rock/emo band Basement has been around since about 2009, putting out over a decade's worth of music. Over the course of this, they've released 4 studio albums and 2 EPs, a slew of incredible music for your listening pleasure. Their sound tends to bounce around within alternative and post-hardcore rock genres, all with an incredible amount of energy and emotion running rampant in their powerful guitar chords, slamming bass lines, thudding drums, and passionate vocals. They're energetic, fun, and emotional, and a really cool band to see live. With all of this in mind, I want to focus more specifically on their sophomore album, Colourmeinkindness, and even more within that, the second track, Covet, but we'll get to that in a moment. Before we do, however, I want to provide a little bit of extra context. Before the album was released, the band had actually announced that they were going on a hiatus for a while, releasing the record, playing their tour, and moving on to personal issues from there. With this now in mind, before the album is even released, listeners and fans of the band are already feeling down. Despite this, when the record finally came out several months later, on October 23rd, 2012, fans were introduced to what was one hell of a last album, at least for a while. Colourmeinkindness starts off with Hole, a fast-paced, energetic banger of a rock song that pulls you into the record almost instantly. As Andrew Fisher, lead vocalist of the band, belts out the phrase, "Lie to me," over distorted, heavy guitars, only to be followed up after the second chorus with an intense guitar solo, Hole starts the record off with an unforgettable opener. It's difficult to describe the intensity of the track without actually listening to it, so I'm going to play it for you for a moment so you can get a sense of how it feels. We see here that despite the somber lyrics and tone, the entire song is still very much grounded in rock and melody. It creates a complex sound through it, and is really pleasant because of that. However, this is contrasted almost immediately in the second track, Covet. For some additional prior knowledge, Covet exists in the key of E major, a song similar to tracks like the opener to Super Heaven's legendary record, Ours is Chrome, called I've Been Bored, and the second track to Microwave's Much Love, Lighterless. Which are both incredible tracks. Additionally, the song is in the tuning of drop C sharp, a sound generally associated with heavier, sadder songs. Bands like Alice in Chains and even some stuff from Nirvana popularized a lot of its sound. Starting off with the chorus of the song, Fisher begins singing solo for a moment before guitars enter in with a G7 sus4 chord. Immediately after, the guitar drops the 6th string back to open while bringing the 5th string up from the 3rd fret to the 7th, 8th, then back to the 7th, only then to form a B7 sus4 chord that will slide up to a D7 sus4. This technique is a variation of something called inversion, where while part of a chord lowers in pitch, the other raises in pitch. Traditionally, both pitches separate equidistance, holding true to the format that Covet exists in. However, Covet takes it an additional octave higher in the 8th fret before returning to the 7th fret, adding additional melody and variation. And because all of that sounds a lot like a bunch of technical musical gibberish, and I can assure you, it is. See, I can use Google too, PBS Soundfield. It's actually a good show though, so check them out. I'll explain it a little easier. Essentially, the guitar starts off with a heavier chord to complement Fisher's drab, somber vocals, only to then drop to a lower bass note while pulling some of the middle tones up to give it a really unique sound. Immediately after, the full band enters with a similar chord progression, giving it a really cool breakdown. Soon after, the guitars drop out, leaving only the rumbling bass and rhythmic drums to push the track forward into the first verse, with Fisher describing a goody-two-shoes sort of person. Keeping this in mind with the chorus, the lyrics highlight his contempt for this person's ideology, and how he hates it so much that he wishes to be away from them every time he is forced to be around them. Additionally, the song's name is Covet, a word with some interesting connotations. In Exodus 20 of the Bible, God describes his 10 commandments to Moses, the last of which is "Thou shalt not covet," or in layman's terms, you shouldn't yearn or want for anything, and be content with that which you have, as God will provide. The idea of coveting therefore becomes pretty thickly associated with the concept of sin, and this is reflected a couple of different ways in the track. One, on a more obvious note, the chorus focused on the idea of one, or lack thereof, as the narrator describes their desire to be away from this person. On another side, due to the person's pleasant, bright nature, the song title can be interpreted almost as an order, with the narrator wanting, or coveting, for the person to sin, to covet something else, if only to prove that they are dirtier than they let on to be. The narrator wants the world to see the dirty side of this person, not the supposed facade they appear to be putting on, egging them on to do something about it. This disgusts them so much that in the pre-chorus of the song, they also describe how they would even rather die than be forced to be like this person. Overall, through these manipulations of inversion, which again makes the introduction riff hit that much more effectively, the instrumental creates a heavy sound that backs up Fisher's contemptuous, angry, and upset vocals, and lyrics almost perfectly, promoting a song that is impossible not to yell to. The even more aggressive, almost whispered second verse creates an even more epic sound, left fresh in the listener's mind as the track fades out with a repeating drum loop. With that as well, the most polarizing part, however, is that this song is almost completely moved on from afterwards. The next song, Spoiled, which, side note, the first lyrics of Spoiled are what that album is named after, enters in with a slightly dissonant riff and energetic sound, leaving Covet in the dust and moving on to other incredible tracks like Pine and Control. The album basically starts off with a strong, energetic sound, only to dip into a weirdly mixed euphoria-induced misery for 4 minutes, just to go back to the rest of a rock record, with some exceptions here and there. After Covet ends, you have barely a second to breathe and realize what in the world just happened before the record barrels on, and are forced to either choose to restart the song or simply come back to it on another listen. All of these aspects form together to help explain how even though Covet was released almost 8 years ago now, it's still their most popular track on Spotify, and oftentimes the first track that people hear from the band. It was even my first Basement track. All of these things allow it to stand among other popular songs in the genre, like Head in the Ceiling Fan by Title Fight, and Stoned Alone by Teenage Wrist. All are incredibly well known in the scene, and impossible to skip whenever played, whether it be on the record itself or in a playlist. Basically, Covet is a really good song, and it's going to be at the forefront of Basement's discography for a while now. So that was Covet. That was Covet by Basement. I really like that song. I think it's very well done. Obviously, you can tell. I just spent the past 10 minutes talking about it. If you enjoyed as well, I would definitely go check it out. And if you haven't heard it, I would definitely go check it out. That album, colourmeinkindness, is very well done. Very good album. Very good band. I don't really have much to say this time around. I know the Mom Jeans video hit 1,000 recently, and the Teen Suicide video hit 1,000 recently, so thank you so much for that. The Dance Cabin Dance video is still doing really well for some reason, so I appreciate you guys continuing to watch that. I don't know. I'm very tired, so I don't really have anything else to say. So I'm going to stop rambling as I usually do, stop taking up your time as I usually do, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, don't, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.